What seems like 100 years ago, when I was teaching music, I went to a workshop led by Chester Hairston. He's was a well-known writer of and arranger of spirituals. And he taught us to wail like we were captives and were longing to be free. And I think about what this song must have meant to people who were enslaved and could only dream about the day they would be released. Free lesson. The gospel reading this morning comes from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 16, verses 21 through 28. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he had to go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders, chief priests, and legal experts, and that he had to be killed and raised on the third day. Then Peter took hold of Jesus and, scolding him, began to correct him. "God forbid, Lord, this won't happen to you." But Jesus turned to Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stone that could make me stumble, for you are not thinking God's thoughts, but human thoughts." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "All who want to come after me must say no to themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. All who want to save their lives will lose them, but all who lose their lives because of me will find them. Why would people gain the whole world but lose their lives? What will people give in exchange for their lives? For the human one is about to come with the majesty of his Father and his angels, and then he will repay each one for what that person has done. I assure you that some standing here won't die before they see the human one coming in his kingdom." This is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Amen. After having read all that, I'm going to preach on Moses. This is one of my favorite stories, not just for the fact that it says, "Take off your sandals, for the place of your standing is holy ground." And Mark has been so good at preaching the gospel that I decided I would take a different tack this morning. Last week, we heard the story of Moses as a baby being placed in a basket that had been sealed and floated in the river because Pharaoh had ordered all the boy babies of the Hebrews to be drowned. And his mother, being a mother, didn't want to have her baby drowned. And so she fashioned this basket and sealed it against the water and put the baby in the basket and had her daughter take it down to the river and put it in the river. And Pharaoh's daughter happened to be coming to the river, and she saw the basket. And she was curious, and she looked, and she saw that there was a baby in the basket, a live, living baby. And she took the baby home and raised it as her own child, the grandson of Pharaoh. Now, there are stories that happen between where that story ended and where McKenna picked it up in her reading. Because Moses, as he grew into a young man, became aware of the suffering of his people, his Hebrew people, and the oppression of the Egyptians, their overlords. And one day when he was out walking, he came across a sight where an Egyptian was berating one of his Hebrew relatives. And the Egyptian hit the Hebrew. And Moses was so incensed by that he killed the Egyptian and buried him in a shallow grave in the sand. And then, the next day, he saw two Hebrews arguing. And he went to them and he said, "No, you have to treat each other as relatives. You are kin, brothers. Don't be that way." And one of the Hebrews said to him, "Yeah? What are you going to do about it? Are you going to kill me like you did the Egyptian?" And Moses realized that there was a witness and that word would probably spread. And so he fled from Egypt. That's where the story that McKenna read starts up. Because Moses meets some women and saves them from some shepherds who are keeping them from being able to water their animals. And Moses drives the shepherds away and allows the women to water their animals. And when the father of the girls hears the story, he invites Moses to come to his house, gives him an elegant meal, and gives him his oldest daughter to wed, and gives him a job watching over the flocks of Jethro. So one day he's out managing the flocks, and he sees this bush that is burning, but it's not just burning. It's fiery, but the bush isn't being burned up. And he's intrigued by this story, this event, this thing that's happening that is unusual, and he goes over to check it out. And a voice comes out of this bush. Now visualize that in your mind for a moment. You're out in the wilderness. There's this bush that's burning. It's not burning the bush up. It's just hot and fiery. And you go to check it out, and it talks to you. Okay? You getting the picture here? This is unusual stuff. And he says, Moses, take off your shoes. This is holy ground. Okay. Moses takes off his shoes. I have heard my people crying. I have seen their oppression. I have come to rescue them. Sounds good, right? God is going to come and rescue the people. Moses was probably gratified to hear this. And then God says, I'm going to send you to Pharaoh to bring my people out of Egypt. We thought God was going to solve the problem. That's what Moses thought. Finally, God is coming to help the people. And how is he going to do that? He's going to send Moses to Egypt to demand that Pharaoh send his people, free his people. And Moses looked around, probably like when you're at the mall and somebody says, "Hey, Mom!" And you turn and look, and Moses looks around. There is no one else there. Moses says, well, who am I that I can go to Pharaoh and demand something as great as releasing God's people? I don't even know your name. Because I'm sure that when I say, God has sent me, they're going to say, oh yeah, what God is that? Give me a name. And God gives him a name. I am who I am. When they want to know who sent you, just say, I am has sent me. The God of your ancestors, of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, has sent me to you. Suppose they don't believe me. Now we're going beyond the end of the story, but I know Mark's going to talk about the gospel next week, so I'm going to give you some hints. Moses has this staff, not a bunch of people's staff, this stick. And God says, throw it down on the ground. And Moses does. And it turns into a snake. And Moses jumps back because snakes are dangerous, especially in the desert. And God says, go ahead and pick it up. And so Moses grabs it by the tail. And you know what happens, right? It turns back into a stick. So if someone questions you, just go ahead and throw the stick on the ground. And he tells Moses, I want you to stick your hand inside your cloak. And when he takes it out, it's diseased. And put it back in. And he takes it out and it's as healthy as it was before. I need some special effects. And he says, take this water from the Nile and pour it out. And he pours it out, and it's blood. Pretty impressive stuff, right? But Moses is trying to think of excuses for why he shouldn't have to do this thing, right? I mean, that's pretty. You begin to look at yourself and you think what talents you bring to this job that God has asked you to do. And you look pretty weak. I mean, Pharaoh is Pharaoh. He's a general of all the armies of Egypt. He can say a word and you die. Moses is not looking forward to this job. And so he begins to think, I don't talk that, I stutter. Well, I'll send someone with you if you really need someone to talk for you. Please send someone else. No, it's your job. That's the story. That's the story. Now I want you to think about why Moses? There's a whole nation full of Hebrew people in Egypt. Why single out Moses? Because he was Pharaoh's grandson. Do you think that gave him an in with Pharaoh to say, I want you to let all the Hebrews go? Maybe. Maybe because he's convenient. He's right there in the wilderness. He's approachable. God can get his attention by being a bush that's burning up. No, it's not burning up. Why Moses? He's not eloquent. He's not trained as a speaker. He has been a shepherd to his father-in-law. He doesn't speak well. He's timid. He doesn't want to do that, and still God is pushing Moses to go. Maybe he was destined to be a leader because of his background as Pharaoh's grandson. Perhaps God suggested because Moses was available. But he was not eloquent. He wasn't brave. Certainly, when God asks him to do this, he begins thinking of excuses for why he shouldn't be the one to have to do that. He's not brave. He's not eloquent. He's a murderer. I mean, he's killed an Egyptian. But still, why Moses? I don't know. This is not a theological good place to be. When you ask these questions about why God is doing something and you don't have a guess for why that could be, this is not a theologically good place to be. I don't know why God chooses Moses. I think it fits a pattern that God does. God tends to pick out the most unlikely people for the jobs that God has to do. I mean, I think about David, you know, when Elijah came to select the son, the next king of Israel, and went through all of those good-looking, handsome, powerful guys that you know this story, right? And who does God select from the pool but the youngest, skinniest, scrawniest kid? His own father didn't think he was worthy for the job, and yet God chooses. Think of the apostles, the 12 that are followers of Jesus in his life. You got fishermen, you got tax collectors, you got people who were set to overthrow the Roman government. You got a bookkeeper. All of these people. And who does God select but those 12? Why those 12? It's like, why Moses? Don't know. I just know that God wanted Moses. For whatever reason, God wanted Moses. God wanted Moses. Have you ever had the feeling that God wanted you? For some tasks that you thought was going to be insurmountable. For a ministry. And you thought to yourself, boy, that's a lot of work. There are certainly people that are better fit for that than I am. See, that's the Moses syndrome. Are your excuses as good as Moses' excuses? God doesn't need you to free the Hebrews. God doesn't need you to confront Pharaoh. And you heard McKenna read some of the things, oh, and I read some too, that God calls us to do. Love each other like members of your family. Be at your best at showing honor for each other. Be enthusiastic. Be the fire and the spirit as you serve the Lord. Be happy in your hope. Stand your ground when you're in trouble. Devote yourselves to prayer. Contribute to the needs of God's people. Welcome strangers into your home. Bless people who harass you. Bless and don't curse them. Be happy with those who are happy and cry with those who are crying. Consider everyone as equal and don't think that you're better than anyone else. All who want to come after me must say no to themselves and take up their cross and follow me. All who want to save their lives will lose them, but all who lose their lives because of me will find them. Those are all things that are instructions to us from Paul and from Jesus. Those are our assignment, our task that God calls us to do. Love without pretending, hate evil, love one another, contribute to the needs of the saints, welcome strangers, take up your cross and follow me. Is that a greater responsibility than that to which Moses is called by God? It seems like it sometimes. But still, God calls us and invites us to serve. Loving God, you've laid a task before us. You've called us to serve you by loving one another. Help us be worthy of your call. In Jesus' name, amen.